Your San Francisco 49ers just beat the Seattle Seahawks. Now 5-0 the last 2 years against Seattle. That feels damn good. What doesn't feel good, however, and we're definitely going to talk about this, is some of the injuries that came out of this game. We got to hope that these guys are healthy, able to make that run. We're going to talk about the possibility of the number 1 seed. We got to be Dallas Cowboy fans tonight, as weird as that sounds, and other things that came out of this game. There's a lot to talk about. David and I will get to all of it next. All right. Welcome back to Last Second Sports, where we are giving you our take down to the last second. And it's the post-game rant with my guy, David. David, how you doing, my man?
I'm doing good. It's kind of, I'm stoked for the win. There's just some things you're happy about. There's things that just kind of stuck in your craw about this game a little bit too, but win's a win, man. So yeah.
We'll take it. It was a weird game. I will say that it was certainly a weird game. It's the offense to me was like the biggest takeaway, because just how they scored and how they got it done. Normally the 49ers are a team that grinds out possessions and holds control of the ball and what have you. This week it was a little bit different. It was all off of explosive plays, which was pretty cool to watch, but it was definitely a little bit different. And then the game was probably tighter than what you would hope or expect, especially with the backup quarterback in. But it's a division game. We know how tough those can be, and wins are not easy to come by in the NFL. We see it every week where teams that are better on paper than the opposing team go down, and the 49ers didn't go down. And a big part of that was Javon Kinlaw and others filling in for Eric Armstead. Later became Armstead and Hargrave, who both were out. How do you think that Kinlaw and the others fared filling in for Eric Armstead and eventually Javon Hargrave as well?
Yeah, I felt like I need to go back and watch, right? But I think that there was also times with Hargrave as well. I felt like early in the game, the defensive line was really struggling to get off blocks in the run game, and even the Eagles. I know they said that last week, that it was the game plan was to contain Hurts, and I'm going to take them at their word. At the same time, and yes, they had 8 pressures, all this other stuff, whatever you want to call it. But yeah, there's just sometimes when they're rushing 4, and I think that's why Steve Wilkes sometimes wants to send that blitz on 3rd down, is because sometimes it takes them a little while to get rolling. But that being said, I thought the defense, all in all, aside from dime from Locke to DK, missed tackles, kind of escapades on a couple of different plays, I thought on balance they played tight. They dropped a couple of interceptions, which you'd like to see them tighten up, but they were there forcing bad throws. Took the best Drew Lock could throw at them. Didn't play horribly throughout the game. And they still came out on top. So as for Kinlaw, I thought Kinlaw flashed a couple times, got some penetration later in the game. But yeah, it's something to keep an eye on. If Hargrave is out, and if Armstead misses extended time too, that's something to watch.
Yeah, it is something to watch, and we'll talk about some of the injuries here in a minute overall. But I think Kinlaw for me was the player that I was looking at most. And I think early on, there was a couple running plays where he either over pursued or got pushed out of the play. And I was like, okay, we'll see. Armstead obviously is the number 1 interior defensive lineman on this team when it comes to stopping the run. And he's had a great season overall. Kinlaw's played very well, but Kinlaw has been in a very different situation this year. This is a season where he's had to kind of come in and be the 3rd or 4th guy, depending on what's going on. He's been healthy. That's been a big deal. But he hasn't been asked to be the guy the way that the 49ers had hoped that he would be when they drafted him in the 1st round. And I think overall he played very well today. But he was a guy that I was keeping my eye on early on in this game and watching him. And I think overall he did an admirable job. I think that obviously I think Givens, we'll see how it is going forward. If that's the case, if those are the starters, that's not ideal by any means. But for a week, I think that they can kind of fend things off, especially against a team like Arizona. And I know that you'll be in person for that game, so hopefully it's a good game for you. But overall, I think Kinlaw played well. I think the defensive line with some injuries played well. And I think the secondary, let's talk about them as well. I think the secondary with the injury, the early injury to Ward, also played very well.
100%. And like I said, Avery Thomas had really good coverage on DK Metcalf on that touchdown. People like, oh, that was interceptable. Like, not really. Like it was just, and I don't know if Drew Lock completely intended that to be on that back shoulder right in that spot. Like, but hey, it's still like, it was just, the ball was in a spot where Lenore really didn't have a play on it and used the sideline as his teammate. It did a great job. So yeah, with Mooney going down, Avery playing, I thought really well. Diameter Lenore made a couple big plays. There's a couple plays in particular where it's a short pass where he gambled, but he gambled correctly. Had a couple PBUs where if he misses it and DK catches it, he's off to the races, right? So and then they had Debo had the interception called off because Bosa jumped off sides. So I can't say this enough. I think the secondary has been an absolute strength the last several weeks. And I really think that the defensive line, with Chase and Nick and, all these guys up front get all the pub to have, like you said, to have Mooney go down and to have them hold the line like that. I mean, this game could have been a much bigger blowout for different reasons. So 28-16, I was never really nervous, but like there were multiple opportunities that this defense put this team in to have this be a 3-4 score deficit for the Seahawks.
Yeah, most certainly. I agree there. Let's get to a couple of these super chats. Jesus says, damn, Jesse, I almost won that bet. It wasn't 31-17, but so close. Yeah, he came in during, I think it was the show I think it was my Thursday night show. And he said, hey, if the score is 31-17, you should get me a hat. And I said, all right, I'm not doing this for everybody. But since you asked if it's 31-17, I will get you a hat. It was not 31-17, but it was a very close guess. You almost won it for sure. I know were rooting for that. Gammon says, looking for a big night from Brother Bob. I haven't heard from Brother Bob. I don't know what's going on with him. It's usually in my DMs. Matt says, Jesse, talk about the play they stole from us. What do you want to say about the play they stole from us?
That was the Kittle play, right? And I was in my head thinking, oh, was that 2 weeks ago? No, that was the game. There was a little bit of it was in December last year, and the Niners pull out that victory. And it was like that
against right, Seattle. Yeah.
Look right, look left. Here's your tight end, and it was Parkinson, right? So it's like it absolutely was a page out of Shanahan's book. I actually thought that was tip your hat to them. That's great.
Well, and it got the game close, and then obviously the 49ers just went down and scored again and made it look easy. But yeah, overall, man, it was right out of the playbook. And really, the 49ers, this version of the 49ers stole it from an older version of the 49ers. They've ran that play with Steve Young. It looked a little bit different because the left-handed quarterback, but overall the play had been ran and San Francisco passed. 49ers ran it for a touchdown last year to Kittle against the Seahawks, and then the Seahawks paid him back. Clearly that play works very well because it's gotten touchdowns both times from two different teams with two very different skill sets. But it was much more fun to watch it when the 49ers did it. I will say that. Chris Royal says Brown might just be a star here soon. Yeah, Brown. We're going to talk about Brown. So I'm not going to go too far into it. I know that you have some thoughts on Brown. I saw that you tweeted out some things. So I want to get your full thoughts on it. Oh, here's Brother Bob. He says, I'm here, Gammon and Nails. Dad duties. Listening. All right. I appreciate you, Brother Bob. Appreciate you. All right. Let's talk about these injuries because these are big name players. I think the 49ers secondary held up pretty well without Ward. I think the interior defensive line held up as well. But Seattle, a 6-6 team, now a 6-7 team with a backup quarterback. They have their own issues. And I'm not going to take anything away. Anytime that you lose players like Ward and Hargrave, it certainly could be a lot worse. That being said, how worried are you about these injuries now long term? They're starting to pile up a little bit. So Hargrave's out with a hamstring. We know those things can linger. Ward, interestingly enough, missed time last year or had some nagging injuries last year with the groin, was out early in training camp this year with the groin. Don't know if it's the same one or what have you, but he does tend to have these soft tissue groin injuries. And then you've got Armstead, who had a foot injury, played through that against Philly, but picked up a knee injury with it. So those are three big name guys on this defense that could miss some time here. How concerned overall are you with these injuries?
Yeah, I'm not a glass half full or empty type of guy. I mean, I call it how I see it. I have to be honest. I'm not that concerned. I think that both those guys, they didn't have them in sweats. They had them standing on the sidelines in uniform. They never went to the locker room and came back, in sweatsuits, right? I think that this team. I'm not saying that this is something that can't be an issue. I don't think the Arizona game, no game in the NFL is a gimme, but I also think that Kyle and the brain trust are thinking, okay, we can do this without them today. And I feel I can't prove that. I feel usually when you see something that's like an injury and they've gone to the locker room, those guys never went there. Mooney had the headset on, walking around still with shoulder pads, cleats on, everything. So typically with a hamstring injury and a groin, you're probably going to want to heat that stuff up. I think they were just being cautious, to be quite honest. Could it linger? Yeah. So to me, I like to have all hands on deck, but in Arizona next week, I think it would be prudent if they're not, 90% to say, get ready. Baltimore's coming Christmas night. We need to finish this out. We're angling for the number 1 seed. We can do this without you. So again, I got no crystal ball on that. However, yeah, if these were to be lingering, that could be an issue. The one thing that I would say is this, and you and I talked about this before the season started, Jesse. Having a great defense helps. But this offense right now is, like I said, you could only contain them. Today they were contained by scoring less than 30 points, 28 points. Like, I mean, right. If Ayuk doesn't, Julian Love made a wonderful play on Ayuk. I don't even fault BA for that. It's just one of those things. Like, this team was going to score 35, 42 points again. Okay. I just don't, I'm not that nervous about it. I think they have enough of their pieces there. I think that the front seven is looking pretty solid without the Hargrave. I think Armstead's coming back. I think it's a precaution. The big concern I would have would be Mooney Ward. That to me would be the biggest concern, because as much as Ambry has been playing better, that's a big drop off to move back Oliver back inside and Demo out again, I think, in my opinion. But for now, I think they're good. I think they're just being cautious, and we'll see what happens going into Arizona.
Yeah, I think for this game, it does make sense that they would be cautious. Again, both of them stayed in uniform, not that big of a deal. Greenlaw going out and coming back was massive as well. That we know that he's a big part of the defense. It is one of those things where we'll have to monitor it, because soft tissue injuries can linger. They definitely can linger. And I was going to ask you, I'm glad that you answered. You said, between the two, that you're more worried about missing Ward than Hargrave. I think on the surface, I would say the same. The only issue is that Hargrave plays next to Armstead, and it does sound like Armstead for sure is going to be out next week, or that's the way that they're leaning, and then should be back for the Ravens. But I think worst case, all three have to sit out against Arizona. I would still expect that they can win that game. I just think that the offense right now, it's tough. They're firing on all cylinders. How do you stop them? If they have to win a shootout against an Arizona Cardinals team, I feel pretty good about their chances in that game. I do, regardless of what's going on. Arizona certainly is coming off of a bye week, I believe. So that, makes things a little bit interesting. They're going to have the rest, but they're just not near the team that the 49ers are. So I would say my concern meter is maybe at a 5. And not because of next week, but more so soft tissue injuries. You never know. And they're one of those things that can be easily retweakable, and that's not good. So I guess that's the only concern, is when they do come back, whether that's next week, the week after that, what have you, are they fully healthy, and is it something that they retweak? That would be the biggest concern.
Well, I don't know if you've ever. I mean, I'm not an NFL player, but I have torn my hamstring before. And like when a tear is different from a pull, right? Obviously, but even
For
then with a
sure.
pull, it's serious. Like you usually see limping. I don't know. I think that whenever things are going in a game like this, hamstrings, like you said, particularly hamstring and groin, probably the most sensitive muscles really to that kind of area like that you're going to have. And I think that I actually glad the Niners played it cautiously. They did send Greenlaw out again. I don't know what it looks like. I will say this about Arizona offensive line. I'm not that concerned about the run game. I'm definitely not concerned about. I'm not saying that that's all the defensive tackles do, right? They obviously disrupting the pocket, but I think that they can do it. I think Kalia Davis has stepped up big. I thought Javon Kinlaw was struggling to get off blocks early, but so was everybody. And I think that Kevin Givens can come in and play spot up ball. You got studs all around you. They can make this work. I believe they can.
Yeah, most certainly. JC says that your audio is echoing a little bit. Maybe turn down the gain slightly. Nope. Can't hear you at all now. Now it's down too far.
How's that?
That's good. I don't know. I don't hear the echoing, but I know that my ear doesn't pick up everything, so
Okay.
I'm not sure. All right, let me get to the rest of these super chats. Brother Bob says, I have to watch my wife's Chargers lose too. Laugh out loud. It's got to be rough being a Chargers fan. Do you think Staley makes it through the whole season over there, or do you think he gets fired this week? What are your thoughts if they lose, David?
Oh, I don't understand why Staley hasn't been fired yesterday, the day before yesterday, the day before that, the day before the yesterday before that. So I don't know what's going on there. I get it. Herbert got hurt today, but this idea that this team is a joke, and you have a team that's it also like I'm just going to say this like Brandon Staley is just messing up the whole landscape for the playoffs. Like having these teams that want to be more competitive at the end of the year, the Chargers are putting themselves in a position. What are they going to be 5-8? Like what do you have to fight for at the end of the year? Right? Like they're putting themselves in a position they're going to be eliminated pretty soon in this type of tough AFC, even in that's 5 to 7 seeds. So yeah, I think that's probably one of the more desirable jobs. But I will be honest with you, I think that Ben Johnson would jump at the chance to be with Herbert. But I know that's off topic, so I won't go too far down there. But yeah, it's Brandon Staley. My guy, QB film room from Minnesota, his brother played at the University of St. Thomas in St. Paul when Brandon Staley was like the special teams coach. And he's always telling me these stories about how nobody on the team even knew who he was. Like they barely even knew he was like a special teams coach on the team. Like he'd get on the bus and be like, why are you here? And so he's always just like befuddled how this guy had elevated the ranks so highly to be in the position he's in. And I think that he might go back to the anonymous special teams coach in D3 football. But, we'll see.
Yeah, absolutely. He should be fired this week. He should have been fired weeks ago, maybe a year ago. Who knows? Matt says, my God, I may need a drink cheering for those Cowboys. Yeah, it's an awkward situation to say the least, but it is what it is, man. We got to be Cowboys fans, and especially watching Seattle this week. I don't see them beating Philadelphia next week. So I think everything is resting on the Cowboys this week, and I think they got a chance. I really do. Jason says, did Purdy buy the Seahawks or were they gifted to him? Oh, I see. All right. Did Purdy buy the Seahawks or were they gifted to him? He clearly owns them. Our DBs are starting to look pretty special too. The D is getting nasty. Yeah, Brock does own the Seattle Seahawks for sure. And the DBs are getting much better. Credit to Wilkes. He does deserve a lot of credit for this. I mean, he's a secondary coach. This is what he does well. And I think it's clear that the secondary players have all improved with him being here this year. Twisted Clown says soft tissue needs some of the Deshaun Watson treatment. I'm not touching that one. Not touching it. Matt says... God, Matt says, things I learned today. The Ravens defense can be got. Don't sleep on the Lambs. Well, speaking of Ravens defense and players that are injured, I mean, they lost Kyle Hamilton, and that is a big deal for that team. But also, let's not sleep on the Rams offense. We saw that they were able to move the ball pretty well against the 49ers defense without Cooper Kupp. Now, you give them Cooper Kupp and you can see what can happen for sure. I think Stafford's just one of those veteran quarterbacks that's tough to stop, especially when he's got those receivers. So,
well, the Ravens were struggling to get pressure today, though. I mean, I'll say this. I don't think the Ravens defense is as daunting as I think people have made them out to be. I
they're
think
not
that
as good as the 49ers, that's for sure.
No. And I think that Lamar is, they're going to be a threat. It's going to be a great game. I think that's, and the Niners will be favored for a reason, but I think that it's going to be a good game. And but you said, Jesse, the fact that the Rams lost today brings them to 6-7. That really puts them in a tight spot. And, but yeah, I thought the Rams looked like, if I were being quite honest, I thought the Rams looked like the better team today. And I thought that the Rams are a threat. I think that week 18 game, if it was tight and they needed a win, that's not, again, another gimme, right? Like, this isn't the same old sorry ass Rams, right? It's like, they actually are, like, Puka Nacua had a horrible drop today and then had one of the catches of the year. You have Cooper Kupp, Kyron Williams, and then you have Matt Stafford playing. To me, when he's healthy, like, I don't want to face that guy. Yeah. They look good today.
And I think the defense has improved throughout the year. Those young players are getting more playing time and they're all improving. So I don't think the Rams are a walkover by any means. I think that they're a decent little team that if they could sneak into the playoffs might give a team in the second seed some run. We'll see. And let's hope that it's not the 49ers in the second seed and we'll be good to go. Danny says, good games. Y'all were way better. Hawk and Pete era seems to be done. So Seahawks fan coming through. Well, appreciate you for coming through. I think you're right. Maybe it should be done. I don't know that they're going to let Pete go. It just, I don't know. I think they should. I think Pete is a phenomenal coach. I think he's done a good job rebuilding this team on the fly. They were much better last year than what they should have been. They should not have been a playoff team, but it is clear that his decision and coordinators are awful. They are archaic on both sides of the ball, in my opinion, and I think that that's hurting them. I think they have some really good players, but those players are not living up to expectation because those coaches are not putting them in a position to be at their best. So, and I think that ultimately falls on Carroll.
Well, and I would also argue his in-game decision-making was poor today. I think you're facing a team, and Niners are a juggernaut. Let's be honest. They're a juggernaut. You get a situation where you've got 4th and 2 in enemy territory and you're punting, taking the delay of game. Even on a 4th and 1, you're down multiple scores. You're on the 39. I'm not even in your own territory in the second half. You got to go for that, man. Like you have to go for. I know people are like, well, you can never go for it in your own territory. Yes, you can. Like that, and I feel like that's a big reason why Kyle actually kind of had conservative Kyle come back a little bit in a couple of situations, because I don't think he was really concerned. Like, Pete kind of gifted him a couple of those times, and he's like, you know what? I'm not going to risk turning the ball over because I trust my O here. I trust whatever. And yeah, I think Pete's time is done. He's had a great career, but yeah, here's the thing, Seahawks, Danny, is that where do the Seahawks go? I mean, they have a good offensive line. That's another thing we forget. They have a good offensive line. You've got pieces there, but yet quarterback is still a question mark. Linebackers and coverage is a huge question mark. Secondary, as stout as we thought Tariq Woolen was in the Witherspoon, still can be had. And along the defensive line, like, they've got some holes to fill.
Yeah, they do. I think schematically, I talked about this on Behind Enemy Lines a ton this week, but schematically, it's awful. I mean, the one thing they do on defense, and they do it on offense too, but on defense, they never rotate post snap. I mean, what they show you pre-snap is what you're going to get. And when you do that in this league, I mean, I don't care how talented you are. It's easy to know where you're supposed to go with the ball. And you're asking these players to play perfect coverage, knowing that the quarterback also knows what's about to happen. So I think that's problem number one. And I think offensively, and it was funny because they brought it up when I think it was before like the 2-minute warning. They were trying to draw the 49ers offsides and faking that they were going to go for it on a 4th down. I forget exactly when it was, but the announcer made the point, oh, you knew that this was them trying to draw them off sides because they went in motion way more than they normally do. Yeah, that's because Seattle hardly uses any motion. Their offense is stagnant. Their defense is stagnant. I'm not saying that they're a great team by any means. There's a lot to be desired there, and there's some holes that they need to fill, and maybe they could do that in free agency in this year's draft, but they certainly are better talent-wise than what they're getting out of that team. They just are.
Oh yeah, I 100%. And you look at that team, like Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet are good young running backs.
Yeah.
DK Metcalf and TJ Lockett and Jackson. I mean, Jackson Smith and Jigba was a guy that, I mean, every draftnik a lot out there was saying that was the steal of the first round, right? Like, and I will say this, to me, the Niners facing these guys twice have neutralized them really well. Aside from one big DK play, I'll give them the Parkinson play. Aside from one DK play and a bunch of missed tackles on Kenneth Walker, like this defense shut them down.
They definitely have neutralized him more so than that. Brother Bob says, laugh out loud. You read that when my AirPod was off and my wife heard. Sorry to your wife. Her team is awful though. Twisted Clown says, breaking. Pete signs a contract with double income. Oh man, he's a character. He is a character. Let's talk about the offensive explosion. And I don't mean it from a standpoint that they put up more points than they have in the past. Obviously, 28 points is less than what you've seen from them. But it was how they scored their points this week, David, that was so fun for me to watch. It was, like I said, this offense, you're used to long, extended drives. And with Purdy and these weapons, they have had more explosive plays than what you would traditionally see out of the past. However, today, it was like their offense was neutralized for a big chunk of this game outside of two very explosive plays. And then they had more explosive plays to get more scores towards the end. It was the CMC play to start the game. It was the deep throw to Debo. Those were like the two plays that for 2.5 quarters, that was really the offense. And then it was like, okay, we're kind of moving the ball a little bit. Here we go. Oh, deep play to Kittle. Then we get Ayuk on one. It was just explosive play after explosive play. I mean, this offense, even if the defense is down, this offense, when they are humming, man, it really does seem like they could hold court with any other offense in the league. I mean,
they did have explosive plays, but they were still well within the structure of their offense. They weren't fluky plays. And they weren't. Here's the thing. There were multiple drives that stalled out where there was either a false start or a penalty. And then and there was a kind of a conservative play call on first and long. And then they had, when you're sitting at second and 15, the defense is licking their chops. I don't care how good your offense is, right? Yeah. And so there were a couple turnovers, the Ayuk fumble, the whatever else. Like, this team averaged, I think Lawson, this is why I was kind of frustrated. Also, if you bet the money, 13.5 line, all they needed was 2 more points. 527 total yards today. They were most of the game averaging over 11 yards a play. Obviously, you had the big CMC run. I get that, but still, like 6 of 11 on third down, 19 first downs was methodical. It wasn't like Seattle had 17, but yet Seattle only had 6 yards of play. I actually thought that aside from a couple faux pas, and they again were dominant. And this is why I want to see. I know people say, run the ball, you got CMC, run the ball. I'll be honest. When I see this team go in an empty backfield set, I am not nervous at all.
You get excited, right?
I know that something good is going to happen because what it does is that the defense, Brock's good against the blitz no matter what, but you're not going to blitz on an empty backfield set. And the choices that they have, like rarely did I see that where they didn't convert a first down or get a chunk that got him in a shorter situation. And I just think that Brock showed today, the Debo throw, the Kittle throw, the later throw to Kittle to me was phenomenal. The Ayuk play, where at first I kind of put it on Purdy, but it looked like there was a miscommunication. If he's kind of continuing the route, it was going to be on the money. Even the BA where he split the tackle, right? Yeah, like this offense is going to be the engine of this team. We talked about this in August and July, that the defense is really good. The offense is great. And I know the defense is top 5. I get that. I'm not prepared to say this defense is an all-time great defense. This offense may be Kyle Shanahan's best offense in his entire career, if working with any team, whether as an OC or as a head coach. And I really do feel that obviously all the pieces together are working in symbiotically, but Brock has a lot to do with it. And I was impressed with the way that Brock played today.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean, yes. This offense is so hard to cover, though. Okay. When you really look at things, you had the Browns game, which was the anomaly of the season. Okay. They were tired down the stretch in the Bengals game, but really this offense has not been held down for an entire game outside of one game all season long. It is impossible to cover all of these players. I mean, they've got weapons everywhere. You've got Debo, who can run or catch. Great after the catch. You've got Ayuk, who can route you up and is great after the catch. You've got CMC, who can run and might be a better receiver than he is running back, which is crazy. He's great when after the catch. You've got Kittle, who's great after the catch. I mean, how do you stop them all? And then you've got somebody who's pulling the trigger, who is on time, who is accurate for the most part, makes good decisions, just gets the ball in their hands. And if they are open downfield, we can say, okay, yeah, these guys are wide open downfield. These are throws that he's got to make. Sure. But these are throws that have not been made traditionally in this offense since Shanahan has been here as the coach. And so when you see that those throws are turning into routine plays, how do you stop the offense? I mean, because they're going to be there, David. This is what Shanahan does. He dials up plays to get guys wide open all the time. It's not going to stop happening. And when you get into the playoffs, it turns into more of an offensive type quarterback game because they want to see big scores. So, man, I just, even if the defense has some of these injuries, it's like as long as the offense can stay intact, they're going to be tough to beat, man. They're going to be tough to beat for anybody.
I don't think this team should be favored against every team they play, and that goes all the way through the Super Bowl. And like I said, you can go with your gut, whatever. Like I said, I know you alluded to CMC possibly being a better receiver than running back. I don't know if that's, whether that's true or not, who cares, right? The bottom line is, I'm sorry. I feel I am comfortable with this team being more pass happy. And I know Ryan Hensley's talking, like, they're really balanced, right? I would love, and I get it, you don't want to stop, you want to kind of milk a lead, things like that. And I don't think the Niners have been super conservative in that regard, where they tried to milk out a lead to the point where we're cool winning by 3. I think Kyle wants to put his foot on your throat. At the same time, when this team is out and in rhythm, so the razzle dazzle play at the end, near in the fourth quarter, where it's I was like, if it works, great, but can we just get in rhythm and just do what you guys do? Because what you guys do can't be defended,
so well,
you said. So, and Debo, I'm gonna be honest. I've been all about give BA the money. I still believe that. I will say this: Debo is. Somebody said this. I want to steal their words. I think it was Brian Rennick or Vish or whomever it was. No, it was Jose. It was Jose Sanchez. It was the idea of going to tapping into his 2019 form. Debo is absolutely in that zone right now where he feels bulletproof. And that is scary season. It's absolutely scary season for defenses.
Yes, it is.
So here's the thing, Jesse. That's why the defensive injuries, I'm not that concerned. As long as we don't sustain injuries to any other piece on this offense, like your skill position players, I don't see a weakness on this offense at all.
Yeah, I mean, you have to keep up with the scheme. You have to keep up with the talent. It's just not it's not doable by pretty much any team in the league outside of Cleveland. I mean, they have the perfect aspect of players and scheme that work great against this 49ers. And they're not going to face them in the Super Bowl. Barring something crazy happen, it's just not going to happen. So that was the one team that they had to get through, and it didn't work for the 1 week. That's great. Who else can implement the game plan? It's interesting because a lot of people talk about last week, and Bosa talked about this, like, hey, we laid the blueprint out to beat the Eagles. Well, that's great, Bosa, but you guys have elite players on defense, and you have a good scheme and a good coach and all that. Not many teams can do to Philadelphia what you were able to do. Now, maybe Dallas can, maybe they're close enough that they can. But when you talk about schemes and players that were able to work against this offense, Cleveland did that. So is the blueprint out for this offense, or is it just one really good defensive team that was able to get it done? It's great to have a blueprint, but when you don't have the coach to get it done and you don't have the players to get it done, it really doesn't matter. It's damn near impossible to stop this offense. It really is.
There's no blueprint in my, and this is the thing that you talk about. Kyle Allen up plays Eagles game 6-0 negative whatever yards in the first quarter, right? Kyle sets games up to make you look silly later. Now, I don't say that like he's like completely some mad scientist that is willing to forego points early, but yet he kind of is. Like there's situations where he knows that he might drop a play that's going to be a minimal gain. He knows he has playmakers to mitigate that if he needs to get the first down later, but it's always something else. It's always a disguise. It's always misdirection. It's always sleight of hand stuff where I think there was an interview with Mina Kimes and oh my goodness, Cromartie. Excuse me. I can't remember. It makes defenders see something and they don't know what they're seeing. And Kyle is the best at that. And so it makes you second guess. It makes you tap the brakes for just a second. And that's all this team needs is you to tap the brakes for 1 second to think, should I go here or there? And right now, I think Kyle's in his best. I'm sorry, man. 11 yards of play. Like today, the average ended up with a kneel down and getting conservative 9.9 yards of play. Like that's just a donkey stopping. You know, that you can't stop that.
Yeah, it's damn near impossible. It's damn near impossible. Danny says, so this is the Seahawk fan again. He says, draft a QB and pass rush, offensive head coach, play man defense. John Schneider's a good GM, new center and new owner. Ours passed away and there is no boss. Yeah, I mean, I think that these things are actually feasible and they can get it done. I'm curious to see what the Seahawks do. I mean, anytime a team has as much talent as Seattle, I'm going to keep an eye on them going into the future. Obviously, they're a division rival, so I'm always going to be watching what they're doing. But there's some things that need to be done, and all that is great. But if Carroll's still there, it's going to be tough to get all that done. It just is. I mean, he's kind of showing that this is who he is as a coach. Brother Bob says, okay, Chargers lost, and I hated the conservative first half ending. I think this goes back to what you were talking about, David, which is, Kansas City just lost as well. Goes back to what you were talking about, which is I don't think the 49ers ever felt threatened. And yes, it would have been nice. You know, I think in the moment we're like, okay, call the timeout, see if you can get the ball back, go score, what have you. I think it was just one of those things where like, let's get into the second half. We'll be okay. So Seattle just doesn't pose the threat that really made them feel like they had to get things done and score in a hurry. Matt says, BA, back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons. Yes, sir. Very, very good season for BA, and it's still going. There's a lot of games left, man. Cryptic says, past few weeks, there has been moments that the Niners score. The other team scores, and the Niners come back and score again. They are battle-tested and thriving. Yeah, I mean, I think that there's this thought of, okay, we want them to get down and have to come from behind. And I agree with that. It would be nice to know that you can get that done. However, if you continue to win games, I don't think that's the number one thing. I do think that the thought process seems sound, which is in the playoffs, you may have to be in that situation. But sometimes, and it's rare, but sometimes there is just that juggernaut team that doesn't have to go through that. Maybe that is the 49ers this year. I mean, at times, it certainly has seemed that way. I know that we had the 3-game skid, but the first 5 weeks, it seemed that way. Since the bye week, it seemed that way. I mean, and I'll just parlay this into the next topic, David, which is this 3-game stretch was supposed to be the toughest of the season. When we looked at it, we said, okay, you got Seattle, you got Philly, you got Seattle. That 3-game stretch, that's going to let you know what you're made of. We said it all off season. We said it all season leading up to it. And now that they've come out of that stretch, they won all 3 games going away. They made all of them look easy. They've been very dominant during this stretch. We can't then have revisionist history and be like, well, no, we said we would know what this team is made of coming out of the 3-game stretch. I think we know what they're made of. They're freaking very, very good. The best team in the league right now. And I don't think it's particularly close.
It's not. And remember back after Cincinnati game, I mean, we lost to the Browns. I went to the Vikings game and just like, you got to be kidding me. We lose the Bengals with the turnovers and the defense not making any stuff. And we're saying, hey, this Jacksonville game is a must win. We talked about that. And we were like, okay, if you don't win that game, remember going back. So dominate the Jaguars, dominate the Bucks. I'm missing the game now. Oh yeah. Dominate the Seahawks and Seattle. Go to the Philly. Now you got Arizona. You're going to donkey stomp them. I know that because they're not going to lose to Gannon. All right. I'm not going to say anything more. They're going to, and you got the big Ravens game, right? And they're in that position now where I think teams really understand that they're like, oh my God, if I want to beat the Niners, I got to hold them to probably 28 points, like minimum. Yeah, maybe I have a chance at 20. You don't, but like this idea that 28 today was not. I don't know how you do it. I don't know how a team game plans for you. You just got to hope the Niners turn the ball over. And there were a couple. There was one play that Purdy made where Witherspoon got his hands on it, and then Witherspoon was out for the game. Other than that, I wouldn't have put that on Purdy necessarily on the Ayuk thing. I think it was just a miscommunication. I didn't think he put the ball in harm's way after that. I thought that he did a great job, trying to make tight throws and did that. He hasn't done that since Cincinnati. And that's what we wanted. And he's pushing the ball downfield with ease, with accuracy. That's what we wanted to see.
Mm-hmm.
With those pieces, with Kyle, I just don't. I'm never shocked, but I'd be surprised to see them lose, to be quite honest, in this regular season going to the playoffs. I think they're winning out. I really do. I know the Ravens are going to be a tough test. But this team knows what's in front of them. They know that if they win out and the Eagles lose tonight, it's home field all the way through. Ain't nobody coming to Santa Clara and beating them. Not in the NFC.
Oh my God, that'd be great to be home field all the way through. I've made it a point that I want to go to the NFC Championship this year, and I would much rather be in Santa Clara than going to Philly. So I'll say that. and turns out that there's a hookup that I know that can get me tickets. So that's always helpful. That is always helpful.
Nice to know people like that.
Yeah, it is. It is nice to know people like that. Let's talk a little bit about Jair Brown. So Jair Brown came in about halfway through that Buccaneers game for Talanoa Hufanga. As we know, Talanoa Hufanga, All-Pro last year. I think we both agree that he was not playing at that level this year, but still a very good player. And really just one of those guys who I think that what he brings to the team off the field is also one of those just very, very helpful. I think he's always all smiles. He's a tremendously hard worker. He was going for a contract this year himself. I just think that he's a guy that can uplift this team and this defense, regardless of how well he is or is not playing. And I think a guy like Talanoa is always going to be missed. But Jair Brown came in, immediately got cooked against the Bucks, and then tightened down. I mean, he had a tip pass. He had a big time tackle. He had the game walk-off interception. He had last week, he had a couple plays early where it was like, all right, maybe he's a little bit shaky, but then he locked down, played great. Today he had a play where it's like, okay, maybe, but then he had the interception. I think he played well overall. I mean, he's turning into a very, very good player, surrounded by a lot of other good players. And I got to be honest with you, David. I did bring this up or had this as a topic with Grant this last week. When you bring in a veteran like Logan Ryan, who's been a Pro Bowler, who's won championships, and is 32 years old, out of his own mouth said, hey, I don't need to play. This is the first time I've played on a West Coast team. I'm going cross country away from my family during the holidays. I just felt like I wanted to be a part of this team. On the surface, I thought about it and said, okay, I doubt he's coming here to be a special teamer. Maybe he can help in the nickel role. But also, I think that there might be a possibility that he could play he and Jair in and out of the lineup or maybe replace Jair. Not that Jair's been bad, but it just seemed weird that a 32-year-old would make that type of decision if he wasn't at least talked about playing in some sort of capacity. I don't think you can make that move. Jair's been playing really good football. What do you think about Jair Brown's play? And I know that you've got glowing things to say about him, but overall, what have you thought about his play?
Yeah, I think he's been great. I think here's the thing. I remember when they traded up for him, I liked him as a prospect. I was concerned that he might have been redundant with Hufanga.
I agree. Yep.
And so I was confused with that, although, you can draft good players and yada, yada. Here, look, aside from the hiccup against the Bucs, he's acquitted himself incredibly well. And he's a playmaker. The Mooney Ward dropped a pick today, but Jair Brown Tig was stride for stride. So he's shown that I think Tig has game speed that didn't show up in the testing numbers, but like his range is there. So if Hufanga comes back, I get it. Like, I'm just going to be honest. I think, and this is no slander against Huff, I think that Tig, there's a possibility here that Tig Brown is a better fit for this defense long term. And I think the thing is this: Hufanga is like you said, team leader, physicality. He's also been Johnny on the spot for a lot of turnovers. Okay,
he has,
and that's awesome. But that's also, I get that there's like
it's hard to replicate that.
Yeah, it's like a Kevin Love or an Oscar Robertson, or like have a good way of like getting in position for rebounds. I think that the turnover thing is somewhat more maybe regression to mean stuff down the line. I don't know if Hufanga is always going to be that guy. It's like, it's deflections, it's whatever else. Like, so again, the fact that this defense hasn't missed a beat. Tig is younger. I mean, Hufanga's young, but they're going to have a decision to make next year. I'm hoping Hufanga comes back as healthy as possible, as quickly as soon as he can. But I think they've got their guy in Tig. And with Keyshawn Gibson getting long in the tooth, we'll see where they're at when they address that in the draft. But I think Tig's the guy. I think he's a starter going forward, no doubt about it.
Do you think him and Huff can play next to each other long term?
Yes. I do think that they can do that. I also think that Tig has the ability. I'd like to see maybe Hufanga do more of what he used to do at USC. Get down the box, like go in there against the run. The thing about Hufanga that sometimes does frustrate me, though, is that he can be very, very undisciplined in his pursuit and over pursuit in both phases of the game. And Tig, I feel, is a lot more in control. And to be quite honest, I don't think it was close. Tig was the better prospect as well.
Certainly.
It could be close. I'll say that, but I thought Tig was the better prospect coming into the NFL. So Huff to me is a great player. I think Huff's a good player, and I think Huff's like Hufanga's aura has been lifted by who he is as a person, but also he's been surrounded by elite pieces. So yeah, no slander on Hufanga. It's really more about Tig showing up when he needed to. And I was a little confused as to why he wasn't getting more run early, because it's like, okay, he was your top pick, granted third rounder. So I was like, okay, is he not showing enough in camp? Is he not showing enough in practice? Clearly he has what it takes.
Yeah, absolutely. And the 49ers do this thing where they redshirt players and totally understand it. I'm happy that he's getting playing time and he's playing well. I don't know. It's just there's something about watching young players just play well, maybe even play above what they should be, that just makes me happy, especially when it's happening for your team. And I think him coming in and filling that role is not an easy one to do on the fly for a team that is searching for a championship. And I think he's just done a hell of a job. So very excited for him, very excited for his future. And I am excited about Logan being here because overall they now have a little bit of depth, and I feel good about that depth. So they've turned a position, losing a couple safeties in back-to-back weeks and what have you, which could have been a really tough spot, and they've added to that depth, and I think that they're in a really, really good spot going forward. So I'm excited about it.
I agree.
Let's end on this because it's almost time to watch Philadelphia and Dallas. I think this is a very winnable game for the Dallas Cowboys. They tend to win in Dallas against Philly. I think them coming off of a Thursday night game is a major advantage. And they are fighting for trying to win the division as well. Do you think the 49ers end the night in the number 1 seed in the NFC?
Yes.
When it's all said and done, you think it's over and Dallas has got this?
Well, I don't think it's over. I think I have a friend.
Not that it's I'm saying it's over tonight. Like the 49ers are going to be the number 1 seed after tonight, and Dallas has got it tonight. Yeah.
No,
sorry.
yeah.
Sorry for mincing words.
No, yeah. Thank you for your apology. I was never going to forgive you otherwise. But I think the Cowboys win tonight. I also think it's going to be. It could end up being a blowout. Could end up being a tight game. I was too kind of chicken, you know what, to put some money on the the line because I think it's Cowboys 3.5. I can see this be a Cowboys win by 3 kind of game, you know. But yeah, I think they will, and I think the Seahawks are also a team that next week, if the Eagles were to lose to Dallas, and then you've got a team in the Seahawks who've lost 4 straight. And I think the stats showed like no team has had fewer 4-game losing streaks than the Seahawks in the last 15 years.
Yeah. Pete Carroll had never had one, I don't think.
Right. So if you go home and you've already lost 4 straight, I honestly don't think it's crazy to think that the Seahawks win that game in Seattle at all. At all. This Eagles defense is, I just want to reiterate this. This Eagles defense has really shown they're not good. They're not very good.
They're not good.
You know, and even their front seven, they're big dudes, they're athletic dudes that can make these splash plays. But you get guys like Jalen Carter, who I think is going to be a stud. I think I don't know, he could be a Hall of Famer for all I know, right? They're undisciplined too. Their linebackers can't cover. Bradbury is trash, like Debo said. Slay actually hasn't been all that great either this year. And their safeties are washed. Like, I'm just saying, that's not a good recipe where you're going up against offenses like the Cowboys and the Niners. And so, yeah, I do think the Eagles lose tonight. Could be wrong. And I think the Niners will be the number 1 seed. And at that point, the Niners have to buckle down and say, look, we control it, because that's the way it is. Lions lost today, by the way, too. So they're 9-4.
The Lions are falling apart.
Yeah, and then they get the Cowboys, though, because then that's that situation where if the Cowboys are at 3 losses, just like the Niners after night, if the Cowboys win, if the Niners falter and the Cowboys win out, then the Cowboys are the 1 seed, even though they got donkey stomped by the Niners in Levi's. So it's all week to week. I guarantee you, I want the Cowboys to win so badly tonight. I don't even have a hard time cheering for them. I don't know where other people. I really don't care, because I think that's going to galvanize this Niners team.
Yeah,
to be like, we have done this before. We came short in the Super Bowl. We're not doing it again. Kittle said, I'm going to be back here. And I think this is the night where it says, okay, we control our own destiny.
Yeah, I think so as well. And I think it became pretty obvious after really going into last week that the 49ers were probably going to have to run the table. And it was one of those situations where I looked at it and said, it is hard to win week in and week out. I think this team they may not control their own destiny because they would have to beat Philadelphia, obviously, and then Philadelphia has to lose one more. And maybe they never get the opportunity to quote unquote control their own destiny. But as far as what they can control, which is winning out, I felt like going into last week that they were going to get that done. It seems like this team has something special brewing. It really does.
Yep.
I know that I said this after 5 games and they had the 3-game losing streak and what have. If they end up losing a couple in a row, then you can say I'm the jinx. But this team really does seem like it has something special brewing. And as long as they can stay relatively healthy, especially on offense, as long as they can stay healthy, I think this team is primed to hoist a Lombardi trophy. And right now you're watching the rest of the league and teams that you would say, okay, well, maybe this team can give the 49ers trouble. They're losing players left and right. They have lost some talent in the offseason. They're not quite what they've been in the past. And the 49ers are ascending and some of these other teams are just kind of falling by the wayside. Man, I don't know. It's going to be very, very tough to beat this team. And I agree. I think after tonight, I think the Dallas Cowboys win. The 49ers are the number 1 seed. And then really, they just have to win out and they do control their own destiny. I think they're going to get that done.
And I will say this, even in the AFC, if you look ahead to the Super Bowl, look, there's some good teams. The Chiefs today lost to the Bills. Against the Bills have one of the worst defenses in the NFL right now with all their injuries that they've had. The Chiefs struggle. Okay. And they've been struggling. The Chiefs have been struggling against inferior teams that people thought were inferior. I don't know how good the Chiefs actually are. I think the Chiefs are Patrick Mahomes and a relatively average team otherwise. I think you got the Bills, Josh Allen, right? But lots of holes and deficiencies.
Probably not going to, they may not even make the playoffs still.
I think the team that is the biggest opponent that I'm still not is the Ravens, and we see them Christmas night in Santa Clara. Okay.
But they're banged up too. I mean, you're talking about a team that's lost their best offensive weapon outside of Lamar, obviously. Kyle Hamilton is a big time player and he hurt his knee. He was able to come back, but then he ended up leaving again. Yeah. So that could be serious. I mean, we'll see what the results are of his MRI. Like these teams are starting to fall apart a little bit. And really the one team that I thought was going to go to the Super Bowl and beat the 49ers preseason was the Bengals. And we saw how that matchup played out, and maybe it would have been different with health or whatever, but they are not the team. I mean, they lost Burrow, and so a lot of things are falling the 49ers way right now. It really, really is. And some of those teams that you thought could give them some problems, quite frankly, they just don't seem to be those teams. The 49ers are not only a very good team, elite on both sides of the ball, they're the most complete team, which we kind of knew from a talent standpoint coming into the season. But the rest of the league, quite frankly, has taken a back step, in my opinion, over past seasons. And I think that is a very good recipe for the 49ers to be the favorite. And ultimately, we'll see if that can result in a Super Bowl for them. But man, it sure does feel like that's the direction that we're headed right now.
Yep. And that's the thing. It's 1 week at a time. Like I said, I'm going to be in Arizona next week. I cannot wait. Not only that, but to get out to California, be in Palm Springs after that. I'm not going to be at the Ravens game, but we'll be cheering from Palm Springs. And I think this is, it's going to be that 1 week at a time. And it's exciting. This is the most excited I've been in my lifetime since I was 12 years old. And that includes the 2019 season. I think this is the most confident I've ever been in the 49ers team since the 94 season. And it's founded.
Yeah. I mean, I would say that the last time I felt this confident was the team that lost to Baltimore in the Super Bowl. I mean, I thought that they were the team. And I think that they were the team. They just had some wonky plays at the end of it. Sketchy play calling that ultimately probably lost him that Super Bowl, but that was a very good team. And I'm very, very confident in this team right now. And it's a good feeling as a fan to have that confidence. And being confident doesn't mean that you ultimately win a Super Bowl. But right now, if I'm a fan of the 49ers versus a fan of any of these other teams, if I could choose my allegiance, I feel the best being a 49er fan than I would being a fan of any other team in the league as far as your chances to win a Super Bowl in this given season.
And here's one last thing from me. Like you said, there's a lot of good teams out there. None of them, though, do I feel should be favored with the Niners. I feel like I can guarantee this. There is one team in the NFL that nobody wants to see. You are lying. Fans will go on Twitter and say all this absolute ridiculous. There's no way any fan base wants to face this 49ers team at all. None. And to me, like, there's one juggernaut, and it's the Niners right now. And they have the capability of fulfilling their destiny throughout this, and injuries, knock on wood. Okay. I think they're going to do it. I tweeted out earlier at the beginning of the game after that 7-0. I said, I don't think the Niners are done losing the rest of the season. I firmly believe that.
Yeah, absolutely. Jamal says, Jesse, when was the last time we were this confident in the secondary? I mean, if Travarius Ward is healthy, and I think he should be after a week or two, yeah, man. Even we talk about those Harbaugh teams, or just brought up those Harbaugh teams. Like that has always been a little bit of a question mark. In 2019, that was a question mark. I think those Harbaugh teams, as good as some of those players were and as hard hitting as they were, some of the coverage things there were some gaps there. This secondary right now, really going back to the 90s, is the last time I can say that I was this confident in a secondary. I think this secondary right now, especially with the front four that they have, really a front seven that they have, man, I feel really good about this secondary. Really, really good about the secondary. So,
agree.
David, thank you for joining me as always. I know that you won't be here next week. Enjoy your game in Arizona. I'm sure you'll be watching a 49er victory. We'll get back at it. Hopefully Christmas night, we'll be able to get in a post game. Everybody in the chat, thank you so much for subscribing, supporting, commenting, everything that you guys do. I will be back on Tuesday. And tonight, we are Dallas Cowboy fans for about 3 hours. So go Cowboys. I just threw up in my mouth a little bit. We'll talk to you guys later. Peace.
How about the boys?
God.